Just when I thought my master's degree in Roman art history was useless, Donald Trump came into my life.
What is this, Mr. President?
Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you all. You come this way. Thank you.
For who?
Thanks, guys.
Take a look.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, no, I know where it is, but who's it for?
Thank you guys. The country.
That'd be a beautiful.
The Arc de Trump?
So the triumphal arch is uniquely Roman. It is their invention, and it commemorates a triumphal parade. Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. Now, Rome was a city, obviously, with walls. And then to get into the city, you had a big old gate, okay? So imagine walking through an archway, a gate, into the city of Rome. In Rome, the military was not allowed into the city. That was a rule. They had their camps outside of the city walls. It was a place called the Campus Martius, which means the field of Mars, who was the god of war. And so the only time the army was allowed in the city was during a triumphal parade. Now, a triumphal parade was something that was in honor of a victory, and it was granted by the Senate. The Senate said, hey, you get to have a triumphal parade. Way to go. Way to beat those barbarians. This is like the epitome of being a Roman, is getting granted a triumphal parade. There's a great scene in Gladiator when Commodus has this, and the confetti's coming down and everything. It's beautiful. What every Roman leader aspires to do is defeat an enemy, take all of their stuff, march back to Rome, be granted a victory by the Senate, and then get to march through the streets with your army. Now, in the parade, they would have prisoners of war who were new slaves. They would have images of the gods from that land. In Roman religion, they just adopted whatever religions they conquered. So they're like, oh, you have this god? Awesome. Now he's our god. And so there'd be images of the gods. There'd also just be like gold, jewels, statues, whatever spoils of war there was, whatever wonderful things. And those would be marched through the city. There's an old Roman saying that someone would stand next to the victor and say, you're only a man, you're only a man, because it was such an incredible moment for a Roman. Now, the arch itself, the triumphal arch, commemorates that moment. It is the city gate that you pass through, is a symbol of that. The fact that you are a strong, amazing Roman who conquered barbarians, or someone who conquered an enemy. You were honored by your country, and you were allowed to bring your army into the city streets so that everybody could see what you had done and how amazing you were. Okay? That's the context. The most famous is probably the Arch of Titus, which commemorates the defeat of Jerusalem. And he sacked the temple, the Jewish temple, and which was full of really expensive stuff. And he brought all of that to Rome. Inside the arch, there's actually reliefs, which are carved flat, like carved pictures of the spoils. Okay? Now think about an arch. In an arch, just sitting there, there's one in New York, right? Washington's arch. One in Paris, Napoleon's, the Arc de Triomphe. It is a space that you actually move through. And this is important. I know we don't talk about this a lot in our culture, but the idea of thresholds, of liminal spaces, was very important in the ancient world. And so you have this like giant threshold, and it's a space that you actually move into, right? If you go underneath it, it would be shaded. You'd be out of the sun, and you can actually move around all the sides of it. So it's different than something, like if you think about an equestrian portrait up on a plinth, that's something you just kind of look at and you can walk around, but you don't inhabit its space. So the triumphal arch was incredibly meaningful. It is an incredibly powerful message to the viewer, but it is an enormous piece of propaganda. And see, what I'm really curious about is how a 5-time draft dodger who got elected by saying he was going to stop all wars and then spent 9 months whining about getting the Nobel Peace Prize, why exactly he gets to have a triumphal arch. Was it victory over American democracy? Is it because he owned the libs? Is that what it's going to be? Is it going to be an arch that says, I owned the libs, congratulations, I'm your dictator? So this is very disturbing to me. I know I'm making jokes about it. That's how I cope. And this, coupled with the fact that they're minting coins with his face on them, all of it definitely shows that he is not a dictator or an authoritarian, and we are all overreacting. It's pretty silly. By the way, another note of it that I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about, I haven't, it's my idea, is the triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem. He rode in on a donkey, and to me, knowing that he was in Rome, I think that we don't contextualize that story enough and understand that though he was a poor carpenter and came in on a donkey to the Jews in Jerusalem, this would have been a very charged thing. The idea of him riding through Jerusalem on a donkey with people shaking palm branches at him and yelling Hosanna. The context of that is the triumphal parades of the Roman military leaders. FYI, I thought I'd throw that in there. Not sure when I'm going to talk about triumphal entries ever again. I guess when he puts up his ark, the Ark of Trump. I think it's fitting. It's called the Ark of Trump, right? An ark, it's a two-dimensional line, and an arch is a three-dimensional structure that was illustrated in that model. I think it makes sense to call it the Ark of Trump. Very fitting. I think it should definitely be made out of like clay and then spray painted gold. All very fitting.